Listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now, 559-899-1550.
And welcome to Alan Autry No Retreat. I'm old Alan Autry, honored and humbled to the 10th degree to have you join us today, whether it be by radio, the radio waves, or social media. Just appreciate you so much on Taco Tuesday. And I want a big shout out to Laura. The tacos came. You are just too good to us.
We have tacos.
We have tacos.
On Taco Tuesday.
My gosh, you're just spoiling us. From Robberitos, a great place. As Bullet Bob's mic explodes in his face. That Mike is talking back to you there. That Mike's just about had it with you.
Oh, my word.
But we are just so happy to have with us today, of course, Bullet Bob on most Taco Tuesdays. We got him with
Thanks,
us.
Jeremy. Highly technical skills there required.
Yeah, we just blew out people's ears. But Jeremy, he does the work of 100 people. Way to go, Jeremy.
He was all the way down the hall when he came running in
It's
here.
unbelievable. He's what we call one of those multitasking millennials. And we are also so honored to have with us today. I call him General Somerville, John Somerville, but he was a colonel. He corrected me. But I want to put him up in rank because he is really not only a local treasure, I think he's a national treasure. He served our country for many, many years, and just a wealth of knowledge. First of all, just a top-notch good guy, number one. And then on top of that, just a very insightful, intelligent, and every other adjective you could use to describe his knowledge on foreign affairs, in particular what's happening over in the Middle East and the Ukraine. So, Colonel, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, General, here we go. Colonel, before we get going, because I don't want to forget this, and I have a tendency sometimes to do that. I'll get off on the subjects and get just so carried away with them that I forget to do announcements that I really want to do. And this one is really, really important, and it's concerning your leading a trip to Israel in October 24th to November 2nd. That's a good week, about 8 days. My math's correct over there. And if you want to go on this trip, there's openings now. So jot this number down. I'm going to go slow, and hopefully I'll remember, or Bullet Bob will remind me, or the Colonel will, and repeat this later on. But don't wait on that. Get your pen right now. Write this number down, 559-877-2882. Again, 559-877-2882. And that's a trip with the Colonel to Israel. Colonel, how many times you been there?
Well, it's pretty close to 100 times. And a lot of times I went in and I didn't get my passport stamped. So because you couldn't get into Arab countries if you had an Israeli stamp in your passport. So a lot of times I asked them not to do it. Now, Israel's not stamping anyone's passport. They look at it and they take the requirements out of it that they need, but they're not stamping it anymore. So,
wow.
And this is a reflection of what's going on in the Middle East, because so many of the Arab countries that used to swear they'd never have anything to do with Israel now have come to Israel and have signed treaties, and they're doing business with each other. And that's pretty international, but you can blame Trump for all of this. You can blame Trump for changing the Middle East.
Getting, 4 or 5 other countries to sign a peace treaty.
They have.
Peace treaties that cost Anwar Sadat his life.
Well,
and here that's not an easy do to get an Arab country to sign a formal in front of the world with crazy dictators and clerics and mullahs threatening to behead you if you even recognize Israel and you're a Muslim individual or Muslim country. These are some brave folks that stepped up to do that, right?
Well, they are, and but it
is it. Will you tell? That's the 5th time Biden's called us in advice. Tell him, block him. Could you just block him? I love him, Mr. President. I respect you, but we have a show to do.
Well,
so go ride a bicycle. No, don't do that. Why do they let him get on anything that moves?
I'm not sure.
I mean, not even, you don't want to even put him on, one of those things that you go around the markets in, those little go-karts that you go around in Vaughn's or Safeway in there,
If you're going to ride a bike, ride a 3-wheeled bike, ride a trike or something. One of those.
You put him on those things in a grocery store, he'll be head first in the meat section. Just go, with big, let me tell you, I'm mad, quit lying about me. Boom, right there in the meat section by the hamburger. Okay, back to the serious subject, Colonel. you were, before we got derailed by the Biden call?
Well, I was going to say that there was a leadership in the Middle East of the Arab countries that were absolutely opposed to Israel, and that has held for years. Now, new leadership are coming in, and mostly these are sons of some of the old sheiks, and they're seeing a different world, and they've been raised differently. They've been educated, and so and Saudi Arabia is one of these that was on its way to, and that would have been a big move to sign a treaty with Israel. They do things sub rosa all the time. They're always working under the table with Israel on lots of things.
I don't think Israel helped them chop up Khashoggi, though.
Well, take a look at how the world operates. How many do you think that Putin has had assassinated to stay in power? And this is kind of, and I'm not saying this is the right thing to do, but to have picked out one thing like this because Khashoggi was with the Washington Post, all of those kind of things, and then immediately you tar an entire country.
Yeah, and when I hear people say this, and Bob, I know you want to pitch in here, but I do a lot of thinking and praying on that subject. That's why I brought this up. How far does America go? I mean, how close do you get to people who are just not good people, but there's people that you've made the determination are worse, that are a bigger threat to democracy and liberty around the world. And sometimes you have to partner with bad people to take out that bigger threat. For example, people thought, well, we'd never do that in World War II. We were pristine. We were moral. We had Churchill, France, all the Western European countries against Hitler. But when you look at Yalta, you see Churchill, good guy. You see, would never, abuse his own people. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, New Deal Franklin, there. Everybody loved him. And then Stalin, one of the biggest mass murderers in the history of the world. But we needed Stalin in order to beat Hitler. He was the more immediate threat. So this goes way back, doesn't it, American history? We're not just pure as snow on who you partner with to beat the immediate, for lack of a better adjective, the immediate threat out there. And one that I think the immediate threat, and I'd like your feedback on it, happens to be, I feel, and we've talked about it before when we were over there at Chipotle, is Iran getting a nuclear weapon. You want to talk about instability, and Saudi Arabia is against that adamantly. So you obviously ally just for that purpose only, because they're in the Middle East. They got the military. They got the wherewithal to make life difficult for Iran if they chose to, and keep them from getting a nuclear bomb. Is my line of thinking on or off on that?
No, I think you're right, and I'd say that to me, from a biblical standpoint, that's how I want to look at things in my life. From a biblical standpoint, we need to stand with Israel. Because God's got a plan there, and if we're outside of that plan, then we're in trouble. Now, who's the biggest threat to Israel at the moment? Right now, it's Iran. And Iran has made no bones about it since 1979 that they're going to develop a nuclear weapon, and they're going to use it against Israel, and they're glad that so many Jews are coming into the tiny country of Israel because they say we can kill them all at one time. Well, that isn't going to happen. And biblically speaking, the world is not going to end in a nuclear holocaust. God's got plans for the world and how it's all going to work out. And I'm seeing this over the nearly 100 times that I've been in Israel. I'm seeing miracles being fulfilled, prophecies being fulfilled on a daily basis. So much so that when I begin to talk about it, just as like now, I start getting goosebumps. There are things happening that people had said, this will never happen. But see, in many ways, our world is being run right now by a guy that has a nuclear weapon, and we're afraid to do very much. We look and we see what's right, what's moral. Is it immoral that a country like Russia is attempting to wipe out Ukraine? And people say, well, maybe Ukraine isn't as clean as they ought to be, and all the rest of this kind of stuff. And I see these being slammed against Zelensky, who's the president. They're saying, well, look at his background. I have looked at his background. I've been to Ukraine.
Pretty decent actor.
I've looked. Yeah,
comedian.
He was. No, I've watched him on. I've watched his show called Servant of the People on Netflix.
Better actor than me.
Which was, it was a comedy.
Yeah.
But in fact, it turned into reality.
Right.
When he got elected.
How bizarre is that?
We need to look at things like what you and I can't make these decisions out of Washington, D.C., but in fact, we should have an input, and you've got a voice here on the radio that impacts things, and I've got radio shows, and I do the same thing, and we need to speak up for these kind of things and not be wishy-washy on them.
Colonel and Bobby, let me ask just one question, Bobby, then we'll go to you. When you say you've seen miracle after miracle unfold in Israel, have you seen these miracles unfold in alignment with biblical prophecy?
Absolutely. And a very easy one is I took a group of people and we went up into the West Bank. And by the way, in the Bible, the West Bank is called the Mountains of Israel. It's Ezekiel 36. God has plans for the mountains of Israel, and it's not to turn it into another Arab state called Palestine. So I was up there and I took a group and we were going to help a Jewish community finish their grape harvest. And when we got there in the morning, they said, "Oh, we're so sorry. We just finished. We finished last night. Everything's been taken to the winery. There's nothing left to do." And I said, and I threw a little fit. I said, "That's not fair. We've been looking forward to this. We want to be a blessing to Abraham's descendants, and you guys are Abraham's descendants." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, we have some rootstock. We're going to plant a new vineyard. Do you want to plant a vineyard?" "Yes, we will." I said that for everybody that was with me. And we're out there planting a vineyard. And this fellow comes out with a Bible. He says, "You know what you're doing? You're doing Jeremiah 31:5. And I said, "What's that?" It says, again, we're going to plant these hills with vineyards. And I want a picture of you doing that because you'll always remember this. That's a minor, little, tiny thing that he said, you're part of prophecy. It's being fulfilled here.
That's amazing. Sounds like Riverdale 1964 working out in the fields for Bobby and I. Bob?
Big an apricot.
Yeah.
I wanted to, if we could, Colonel, backtrack just a little bit what Haas was saying with regard to allies and what those, nowadays, what constitutes an ally, I guess, and your thoughts on President Biden going to Saudi Arabia and with begging for oil or crude, whatever. And what are your thoughts on that? Is that a wasted trip? Is he going to gain anything out of that, you think?
Well, that's up to Saudi Arabia whether they want to increase their output. And see, people believe this kind of thing. If you pump too much oil, pretty soon you're going to run out of it. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't know why dinosaurs all went to different places and all died together so they can be fossil fuel. It seems to me that somehow
it's renewable.
When God put together this entire universe and he gave us things like natural gas and oil and all the rest of this, it doesn't seem to me that it's so limited. And we've been all worried about doing those kind of things. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's another whole subject.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, Colonel. We're a little over here. We're going to go take a break, pay some bills here for Guillermo and KXEX. This is Alan Autry, No Retreat with Colonel John Somerville and Bullet Bob Leone. Don't you go away. When we come back, we got a couple of more subjects we want to pick the Colonel's brain, especially Ukraine. You know, where's Ukraine going? You know, media seems not to be covering like before. Why is that? We'll discuss that when we come right back.
Telling me
good.
I got to
Outstanding. Talk about Ukraine. You still live in Riverdale?
No, I've been here in town since 1972. I got out. I got out of high school with Haas, and then went to JC for a couple of years, and then so I've been here. Yeah, the big city.
The shining city on a hill. Fresno.
Yeah, the shining. I just retired after 45 years.
Oh. Yeah.
Being best friend ever. Known each other since
Fourth grade.
Yeah.
Adam Schiff up there.
So down here. He's keeping me on.
We're having a ball.
Regard to the happening in the world.
Keeps your brain sharp. Well, Bullet was he has a background in radio. Before he got in the insurance business, he was on radio. He had a following, big following.
Oh yeah.
Old KMAK.
He make
Radio. Country hits all the time. Way back in the early 70s.
the bars are all closed. It's 4 in the morning. Who's that? Who is that? I'll give this picture right here if you can tell me who that was.
Well, that was kind of a pretty poor rendition.
Okay, let's do it now. Who's gonna fill their shoes? Who's gonna stand up tall? Who's gonna play the Autry and the Wabash Cannonball? Who's gonna fill their heart and soul with songs for me and you? Tell me, Colonel, who's gonna fill their shoes? You will not fill George Jones's shoes.
You just gave away the answer.
Yeah. I know. Well, I still give away the picture. I'll write something nice on there. Just call up 899. Oh, what is it?
559.
559-899-1550. Yeah, the call letters of the radio. How ironic and coincidental.
What do you have in your coffee today? You seem to be,
that is the word. You know what? I'm glad you mentioned that.
You seem to be hyped up on something.
No. What that is, I ordered a skinny latte, which I thought was just going to be non-fat milk instead of milk in the regular
1
latte.
minute?
And the skinny latte, apparently, there's no calories, but they put this sugar-free syrup in it. And I'm telling you, that is unbelievably awful. I got to drink because there's some caffeine in there. How could I do George Jones properly without the caffeine? So I've got to take a sip of courage.
Yeah, that.
We've got Willie.
Oh God,
Willie's Roadhouse.
it was George Jones.
Listen
we got a winner. We got a winner.
Listen to it all the time.
Yeah, get the winner, the winner's name, and I'll write something nice, an address, and we'll send it off to
The
you.
thing is that
25
I
seconds?
know all the words to all those songs.
Yeah.
And I never tried to memorize them. They just stuck.
Yep.
There's.
Well, that's like we remember songs from when we were in elementary
I keep
school
a
and high
close
school,
watch on this heart of
50
mine.
some years ago.
I
And
keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the ends out for the ties that bind. Because you're mine, I walk the line. That goes out to Autry's Home. Ow!
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town.
Step all over that intro. It's all right, baby.
1550 KXEX.
Traveling
Call
man.
Alan now. 559-899-1550.
Yeah, Taco Tuesday. I can't wait to tear one of those Robberito tacos that Laura sent us. Gosh, I can see them right through the window, Laura.
Thank you,
I'm
Laura.
staring at them right now. Wrapped in that little bag.
better get
And
there.
it's big.
You better
We
get
send a
there
lot
quick.
of tacos and enchiladas. Jeremy's got his eye. He's quicker than me. He'll get over there and get them for you. He'll leave. We won't have an engineer in there the last 5 minutes of the show.
Where'd Jeremy go?
There'll just be a pair of earphones kind of hanging in midair like the cartoons. He'll go there and he'll grab those. Okay, General, I know you wanted to talk about this. I mean, we could talk all day, and I would be enthralled listening to you. And I know Bullet would, and
absolutely.
everybody listening on the Middle East. So much to talk about, and hope you'll come back and do that. But I know you wanted to talk about the Ukraine. That's something that's really heavy on your heart, which way this country goes. On that, the consequences of not so-called winning the war, even though what bothers me and gives me a heartburn is what is victory. It's not been defined by either Zelensky, Biden, or Western Europe allies. Other than Austin's the only one that came close, and I thought it was a horrible statement that he made. He says, well, our goal is to grind Putin down in his military so he's never able to field a legitimate army ever again. Well, that's the way to get people on Europe fired up. But give me your thoughts, number one, on Ukraine, where it stands now, because it appears, to put it in everyday language, it appears like the Ukrainians are getting their butts kicked right now with the artillery war. Am I reading that right? Or is there something deeper in there that you're seeing that gives us more reason for hope?
Yeah, it's no, it's hard to know, and this silliness. To me, it's silliness that the United States is tied to a 30-nation alliance called NATO, and all 30 nations have to agree to anything. And we've got somebody in the White House that can't see the morality of what's going on in that country right now. I've had the great honor, and it was an honor to me when I was there in Ukraine, to realize that just because somebody speaks Russian doesn't mean they're pro-Russia. For hundreds of years, that country has bounced back and forth, and the majority of the people know Russian and Ukrainian. And consequently, we think, well, if somebody speaks Russian, then they're pro-Russian. And that's hardly the fact inside of Ukraine, because they know it's a democracy, and they have a freedom there that they don't have on the other side of the border. The reason I was there, I've been going in there with an organization called Ezra International. And Ezra International has the job of finding Jews, because Jews, especially in Ukraine and in Russia, have been hiding their Jewishness since World War II, because millions, 1.5 million Jews in Ukraine were killed out of the 6 million that were slaughtered by the Nazis.
Wow.
That's an incredible number. They have not forgotten that, and many of those people are still alive, and we've rescued them. We go and help them if they want to leave, and if they want to immigrate to Israel, then we'll help them raise the money in order to do that, to pay whatever their debts are.
Wow.
And over the years now, we have brought over 40,000 into Israel.
Oh.
That's a miracle, because one of the things it says, God says, I'm going to say to the east and to the west and to the north, give them up, and the Gentiles are going to bring them home. And in fact, that's what we're doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Colonel. Wow.
It's just when I look at the Ukrainian situation, I do my research. I've done a lot. Not where I'm an expert on it, but it interests me a great deal, because I think this war, whichever way it goes, is going to be a determinant of the future of the rest of the world, from the kids and grandkids, our kids. So it interests me what kind of world we're going to leave behind. But it's such a country filled with contradictions, trying to figure out really what kind of regime is this? Now, certainly they have more freedoms than you would have in Russia, but there's just some things at play that are so contradictory that you figure out what is going on there. For example, you have a Jewish president, Zelensky, yet you have the most celebrated wing of the military, the Azov Battalion, which are self-proclaimed white supremacists. They're out of the Hitler mode. They were instrumental in fighting bravely during the Crimea War, and was given an award by the prior leader of Ukraine. So you're sitting there going, how does this fit together? And you look at I guess there's an organization that ranks corrupt countries around the world, and Ukraine is always in the top 5 of corrupt countries, in particular of how much aid gets to where it's supposed to when you give it to people. So people saying, okay, give them $40 billion, how much actually gets to where it's supposed to? So it's difficult. Now, having said that, I'm 100% against Putin. I'm pulling for Ukraine to win this war. But the point is, if they're going to be in the European Union, they're going to eventually be one of those number 31 in NATO. Don't they have a lot of cleaning up in their own backyard that they need to commit to us? Like, okay, shouldn't there be strings attached to this? Okay, we know you're in a bind here. But listen, how you've been operating here in the past, you need to clean that up, because we're not going to have egg all over our face. You've already shut down media, just like your dude buddy Putin shuts down media. You've already done that. Zelensky, you've done this. You got to get rid of this Azov Battalion that's down there in Mariupol. We know you love them. They fought hard. They love Ukraine, but you got to put your foot down. You can't have anti-Jewish military people that you honor. So my question is, Do you think any kind of discussions like that are happening, or this war happens so fast, it's just, let's do our best to defeat Putin and then we'll figure all that stuff out later?
Well, I can't say. I don't know. I'd say the fact that Zelensky was elected by a vast majority, that there's a change going on, because there's no doubt Ukraine had a lot of anti-Semitism. It's why the Jews have held their Jewishness. For the most part, they've hidden it for all these years. One of the things we do, if we find a family that wants to leave and wants to go to Israel, then they have to prove that they're Jewish. And that's not easy to do, because they've been hiding it now for 50, 60, 70 years. So we have to take them. We have to take the family from whatever little village they're in all the way to Kiev, because they say, we remember our grandfather, we think, was in the hospital in 1946 after the war. And so we go to the hospital and we say, do you have a record of so-and-so being here? And then the guy goes, no, we don't. Well, maybe, but, it costs a lot of money to search all these. And so we pay it. Then the next thing, he goes into a back room, and after he smokes 2 packs of cigarettes, he comes out and says, well, yeah, there is a document there, because the documents under the Soviets always had a place, not for religion, but for race. And they had to fill in Jewish. That was their race. And so if you can get that document, then you can begin to start to prove that they are Jewish. So consequently, but it costs a lot to make a copy of that. So then we pay we pay him some more money.
Sounds like my trip to Tijuana.
Things have always operated that way. And we say, well, it's a crooked country. I'll guarantee you there's countries all around the world that they operate the same way. These people don't get paid anything. The Russians that come to Israel tell me, they said, yeah, we used to pretend to work and they used to pretend to pay us. And so it's how you do that sort of thing.
Colonel, I just use common sense. When you see these politicians accuse America of being a systemically racist country, that if you're white, CRT, that's woke left thing. If you're white, you're automatically racist. You just don't know it. And if you say you're not a racist, then that means you're even more of a racist. Try to figure that out. That cognitive dissonance there. And you point out the fact that the country, the systemically racist country, elected a black president not once, but twice. And once handily, the second time even more handily. And it was the majority of the white people that put that black man in office. So you look at the Ukraine, it's called an anti-Semitic country, but it elected a Jewish president. So how anti-Semitic really can the country be? And I'm heavy emphasis on systemically anti-Semitic. Sure, there's groups all over, as there is in any country, that have this racism, but the majority, and I understand Zelensky won handily. So you have a Jew in a supposedly anti-Semitic country that wins it. That it just doesn't compute that it's a systemically anti-Semitic country.
Now, I'm just saying that there's a lot of anti-Semitism that has been part of that, that part of the world, for a long time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It just, people are trying to figure out, what is the Ukraine? Who are they? I mean, who even thought much about the Ukraine? I knew about it because I'm a big boxing fan. The Klitschko brothers are from Ukraine. And Vasily Lomachenko, 3 of the best boxers in the world. So a little bit about Ukraine, but I didn't want to hustle over there to Google and find out.
I know at least 2 of them volunteered to fight.
Yeah, so did Lomachenko. But they told him to go home. We don't need you.
Can I switch gears a little bit here, Colonel? And I just
as long as you slow the gear down.
Yeah, well, it has to
speed up. Put it in.
It has to be.
Put it in fourth gear.
It has to be in slow compound for me because I'm slow on the uptake anymore. Just to get your opinion, with regard to where does Ukraine go from here militarily? We're still sending the money and the munitions and those kinds of, as are other countries. But where do we go from here? The East, the Russians are still pounding the East, and doggone it, I just see this poor country getting beat up, and their cities are being destroyed. Civilians, when you see young kids sitting out in front of their home, their bombed out shell of a home crying and said, what happened? I didn't do anything. It just breaks your heart. So I'm wondering, where does the Ukraine go from here? Yes, I know they're going to continue to fight, but doggone it, I just see this as a long, protracted war of attrition.
And is it winnable?
And what is the win that we can expect?
I think it's very losable if, in fact, we say, okay, let's make them sit down and negotiate. Well, there's no why should you negotiate away a good part of your country? Look, in 2014, the Russians came in and they took over Crimea, and they took over the eastern part, and they pretended these were locals that were separatists.
Right.
And in fact, they were supplied by Russia, and many of them were Russian troops. This was one of Putin's ways of taking over any of the Slavic countries that he could. So, if all of a sudden we said, now why don't you just sit down at the table with Putin and see what you can work out? Baloney.
Yeah. Because
13,000 Ukrainians died from 2014 until now in those eastern provinces. 13,000, and those were Ukrainians that were killed by what are called separatists. Right. I think the Azov battalion, I know all the stories on that. I think that's been blown up bigger than it is. It was taken over when the last president fled to Russia. Right. Another one of those guys went to take that over, and I'm not convinced it's what it is. And besides, they've taken a big hit. They're not certainly as strong as they used to be. We sit along with 29 other nations in NATO, and we're doing very little. It sounds like Biden says, I want to give him another $50 billion and all these big numbers.
Right.
But when you listen to General Jack Keane, who carries a great deal of credibility with me, he said, okay, when it goes from the president and it goes down to the Pentagon, and the Pentagon looks at it and says, yes, we can afford to give these number of Stingers and these other kind of things and all that stuff. But then they don't start shipping them right away. Then it goes to the National Security Council, Jake Sullivan and other people like that. And they sit on it for weeks before they give their approval, or by that time they've whittled it down. Then it's not there yet. But you and I remember it was 2 months ago that Biden said he was going to send $51 billion worth. It hasn't arrived. And much of the stuff that we talk about has not yet arrived. Germany was the first one. They said, oh, yeah, we're going to send some, I forget what, artillery right away. That was an amazing kind of a move, because Germany was the closest to Russia of all the NATO nations. And in fact, my son-in-law is from Germany. And I remember asking him, what's going on? He says, I'm shocked. I can't believe we're doing that. I can't believe Germany's doing. They've never sent it yet. And that was back in February. So consequently, they aren't getting what they need, and we're sending them pea shooters when they need some big howitzers, and they need hundreds of howitzers, not 15 or 20 of them.
Well, that kind of brings me to my point. On this show, I've reiterated over and over again, because I'm just a logical guy. I see no logical military calculation, considering all the factors dealing in reality, that Ukraine can win this war. They fight valiantly. This is Ukraine. They're willing to die, give their last ounce, drop of blood for their country. We get that. But I see, like you said, Germany come out of the chute fast, talking a big game. All of Western Europe did. Now you see them receding like scalded dogs, because what happened? Well, Germany made that transition to renewables way too early. So now the fossil fuel's gone. They're looking over going, how do we heat our homes this winter? How do we cool our homes? Getting an uprising of the German people. They've disbanded their nuclear program. So they're trapped in the gas situation, and they're cutting deals with Russia with Gazprom, that the Russian gas company. You see France doing the same thing, and not ironic that I wouldn't say ironic how I predicted it, that France and Germany, the first two that came out of the chute saying, we're with you all the way, we got your back, just fight it, are the ones calling for diplomacy now, saying we're changing our tune here a little bit, or a whole lot, actually. You look at the numbers that are there, as Bob said, just the war of attrition, outnumbered 15-1 with equipment, people. You can just slowly annihilate the entire population unless you're willing, you meaning Western Europe, the Allies, NATO, and the United States, part of NATO, agree to send troops, send boots on the ground. I don't see any way that you can send them the amount of equipment in time to stop this Russian advance, which started slow, but is step by step going into juggernaut status in their own way of being able to just brutally level cities. If you don't lay down your arms, just flatten them, scorched earth. I just don't see the political calculation, because part of the military calculation, because you can't have victory unless you have the political will. Ukraine cannot do it on their own with just equipment only. So that's what it's really heartbreaking, as I say with Bob, is are we giving false hope to these people, and are we really fighting this war the right way? Because we know our efforts at diplomacy, as saying, hey, let's sit down at the table, may fall on deaf ears, with Putin probably do, but you know that Putin will listen to China. And China's got a big investment all over this world. They don't want to see the world in ruins. They got these supply chain things. They want the stuff coming out, the economy back at least like it was, more than anybody. And I think they're starting to get a little heartburn with seeing what Russia's doing. If we could get China to say, hey, Vladimir, time to get to the table. My question is, do you think we're even doing that in the back channels? Does your gut feeling tell you that Biden may be saying this on one hand, but through diplomatic channels with China saying, hey, can you help us out here with this crazy dude, Putin?
I don't know that that's going on. I really have no idea. But I do feel that from a moral standpoint, we are still the big dog in the world. And we are not even whimpering. We could make a big difference. There's going to be a world food shortage if, in fact, Russia moves over and takes out Odessa. Odessa's the last port that they ship through. And what most people have never realized is the fact that Ukraine is one of the great suppliers of wheat and corn and maize and so many of these factors. And it mostly goes to Africa.
Yeah, they're suffering big time over there.
And this is... Putin's been stealing whatever he can out of there. Now, he's also a grain exporter, Russia is, but he's been taking all of this stuff that he's doing is absolutely opposed to what is righteous and what is right. And in fact, I guarantee you that we better not just lay back and let it happen. Because if anybody, when I was a kid, we grew up with the idea that the United States is the policeman of the world. Now, that's been turned around like, oh, that's a bad thing, having to be the policeman of the world. But in fact, we were standing up for what was right, and we were ready to go. And in the Marine Corps, we never considered whether or not to go. Vietnam, yeah, we ought to do that because the North Vietnamese and the communists are taking over the South. That's the right thing to do. Well, today that would never fly.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think of the Pope Francis's statement that NATO brought this on by their reckless expansionism?
I don't agree with that at all. And it wasn't reckless at all. Certainly, you look at NATO, they have no intention of being aggressive against Russia. I mean, that's a phony thing that Russia has cranked up, like we're being surrounded by them and they're moving toward us. You look at these NATO countries, and they're the most anti-war group there ever was. It's amazing that the EU ever held together.
Which surprises me. Why would you let Turkey into NATO? Erdogan's a very adventurous type guy. And I would say, and in NATO, one's invaded. It's the old fraternity. We're all required by signing on. Turkey gets into a conflict or gets invaded, we got to go protect Turkey. And Turkey's been all over the board in terms of who they support, some of the things, alliances they've made. And I don't want to see American soldiers spill blood for Turkey ever. So my point is, how in the heck did that happen?
Well, it happened a long time ago.
Yeah, and I remember I was in the Bush administration.
But the real reason was because Turkey has the southern area that the NATO is mostly on just on the west of Russia. And so Turkey is in the south. So they're strategically located. But I agree with you.
But
Erdogan is all over the place.
But is that a good biblically driven decision?
No,
to bring a country like that in with its very prevalent human rights violations into so-called free countries. And
well, we have to remember that Turkey was on our side in Korea. Turkey was on our side in Vietnam. So as we can look back on things and see it through a different kind of a.
But have they proven themselves? Is my point. I just get heartburn with Turkey. I don't see. It's like a misfit. It's like George Goebel was on Johnny Carson one time, and he asked him, and George about how being in Hollywood. George Goebel's crew cut and everything. Just, have you ever felt like the world's a tuxedo and you're a pair of brown shoes? Turkey's the pair of brown shoes. Well, what do they do? It just doesn't fit.
They are now, but they always haven't been as far as when we looked at them.
How easy do you know? You may not know this. How easy or difficult is it to kick somebody out of NATO if they come in and they don't behave?
Oh, I don't think that would ever happen.
But I mean, do you have any of the machinations?
No, I have no idea. And in fact,
because today's democracy is tomorrow's dictatorship. Today's dictatorship is tomorrow's democracy.
I think we are hiding behind NATO, and we're hiding behind Article 5 and a lot of things like that. Like, well, we can't give them long-range artillery because they might fire it into Russia.
Well, let me ask you this. I don't think it's going to be a tough question. It's something I look forward to you answering. You're in charge of it. You're a military guy, and you're charged with Colonel Somerville. Lay out the strategy to win this war. How would you do that? Not getting into the details, just broadly. What would be the main steps that you would take to garner victory for the Ukraine?
Well, I'd certainly provide them the kind of material that they're asking for, and I would have had a no-fly zone. That was a no-brainer to me. If in fact you're allowing Russian to bomb these people, and we say, well, we can't put up planes there because, gee, that would be a no-fly zone and all this kind of stuff. That's what they needed very early on, and we didn't do it.
So you would have called the nuclear bluff.
I think we should.
You would have said, okay, no, there's a lot of folks that agree with you. I'm on the fence on how far to go on. That's why I wanted to hear from you. So you would have had a no-fly zone, and which would have been a big thing.
Well, it would
initially
have been,
started off.
But remember, Poland offered MiGs that the Ukrainians knew how to fly, and then all of a sudden, oh, no, we can't do that sort of stuff. We allowed them.
Why do you think they pulled back? Poland didn't
because Biden said, no, we can't.
So you
we
think
can't take
Biden
them.
telling Poland?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I
think there's a lot of things we could have done early on, and we still could do. We don't understand that we should be the moral leader in the world, and I don't care what anybody thinks about that. We ought to be. And we have a president now who constantly says, "In God's name, in God's sake, in God's sake." And
so you're saying we're just not all in? We need to be all in, and we're not all in.
Well,
we meaning the United States and NATO.
I think we should be.
We should
because
be, okay.
This is a worldwide disaster that's heading to us with the food and everything else that can't get out of there.
All right, let me ask you this. Strategically speaking, we're not all in. You think we should be all in? Do you think the fact that, and I think it's clear fact that we're not all in. We're not doing everything we could, whether you're for the war in Ukraine or not or whatever. It's obvious. It's not even, it's just a observation of fact. We're not all in. We're not doing everything we could do. People may say, well, we have good reasons not to be doing this, whatever, but we're not all in. Do you think that how big are the consequences for not being all in terms of what could happen in Taiwan? Do you think? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the same thing.
You think it encourages Xi Jinping by not being all in?
It certainly does, because we've for years we've implied that we would help Taiwan, and we've backed them in case China ever comes against them. And then immediately we say, well, if we don't do it there, why should we do it in Taiwan? And I mean, I have reasons why we should, but in fact, it means our word's no good. We've given them our word since 1950 that we're going to stand with them and that they're a free country and so forth. But I don't think our word stands for anything anymore. And that we always find ways to worm out of it. And I'm seeing, I was 30 years in the Marine Corps. 3 of my kids came in the Marine Corps while I was still on active duty. Well, one of them stayed in and he retired. Now, my grandsons are in the Marine Corps. And they have the same kind. I hear them. It's like hearing myself 50 years ago. I hope my unit can go to Ukraine. We want to go. All of that stuff. They don't want to go to kill people, but they want to be tested. And as a country, we're being tested, and we're failing that.
We're not
test.
Passing that test so far.
Not at all. We back down every chance we get to really do something, and then. Well, I want to see us know what we stand for and, in fact, follow through on it. Why did we go to Vietnam? Why did we go to Korea? For the very reasons that we said we're going to protect them. And now we're saying, well, we really can't protect anybody. It's too dangerous a world.
And
can we make it? Go ahead.
I'm just going to follow up on that. As a 30-year Marine, to see what's happening now with regard to our country and the leadership, that's got to be pretty disheartening, pretty heartbreaking for a person like yourself, who's given, your life's work in the Marine Corps and doing other things. That's got to be hard to stomach sometimes, I would imagine.
Well, I think it's mostly hard to stomach from a biblical standpoint.
Okay.
We either stand for what's right, and there's no question about what's right and what's wrong. And I don't care what people think about Ukraine. The fact is, they did not start this war. They're
Absolutely.
the victims
That's right.
of it.
Absolutely.
And they saw.
No getting around that.
We saw, and the world saw, and since 2014, we did nothing about the areas, the Crimea and the rest that Russia took over. And then we sat back and we watched while they lined up hundreds of thousands of troops on the border, and finally went in February. And there's no doubt we could have done more.
We just got a couple of minutes left. Oh, gosh, we could go on 3-4 hours. Oh my goodness,
there's a lot of ways to go on this.
Oh my goodness, I'd like you to come back one day when you get some time and talk about the biblical aspects of China. I'm sure of their dominance in the world in so many areas. Real quick here, did we make a mistake after World War II by not allowing Japan and even encouraging Japan to rearm themselves a little better? I mean, I would rest more comfortably. We've got South Korea over there well armed, to confront China if they go after Taiwan. But Japan has just been kind of freeloading, man. Great economy, but they haven't spent anything on the military.
It would have been hard to do that right after World War II when you see what China did, what Japan did in China.
Yeah.
And China's still holding that up as a reason.
And
great point. That's a great point.
Horrific stuff they did. There's no getting around that. That Japan, Imperial Japan during that time, I tell you, they had few peers in the evilness of which they fought that war. I could see that, and like you said, China still, they have not forgotten that at all. So, General, General. Yep. Yeah, promoting Colonel Somerville. Again, we have coming up. I want to get. Where is my piece of paper? October. Do you have it in my heart? Or
we're going to Israel on the 24th of October, and we're coming back on the 3rd of November.
Oh, the 3rd. Okay.
And what you tour the Holy Land, and
well, we do that. It's certainly biblically based, but it's also primarily what is going on in the world today. When people get a view of what Israel is living under, and learn a little bit about Syria, and we'll go up on the Golan Heights, and you'll look into Syria.
Oh wow! Whoa.
And Syria is a conglomerate of Russia being in there. Russia went to Aleppo and demolished the famed city of Aleppo. It's nothing but rubble.
Jeez.
And this is exactly what they did to Mariupol. This is what they're doing in Ukraine.
Well, any city that resists, if you don't lay down your arms, that's your fate, you know. And real quick, we got 2 minutes. Naftali Bennett out in Israel. Looks like going to be a new government. Israelis are going to go to the polls again for the 5th time in 3 years. Does Netanyahu make a comeback, or did the corruption charges
catch up?
No, I don't think so. They're all falling apart. There was some real dirty work, and look, I've known Netanyahu. I mean, I've met him a few times.
He's one of my heroes.
I
love it.
We've had good conversations. He's a very open kind of a guy, but in fact, he has made so many enemies and political enemies. And most of the people who are against him used to be very close to him. in the Likud. And in fact, it shows you can't trust his word. Now he's a politician, and they call him the magician. He's always able to pull something out of the hat. He's worked very hard during this last year to bring down this government that Naftali Bennett has. But it was the weakest, shakiest government Israel's ever had. They had to bring in Arabs into it, bring in leftists.
Shaky coalition, from the beginning, wasn't it?
And it's to me, it's amazing that it's
any name come to your mind?
Long.
Any name besides Netanyahu that comes to your mind?
No, Netanyahu is definitely going to put together the next.
Has he learned? Do you think he's learned? Do you think maybe he'll be a little different and be more able to put together a coalition?
I don't know whether he will or not, but I'll tell you what, it'll be more stable. And in fact, they're under great pressure from Syria. Syria is, and also Iran. Syria is right on the border, and it's a real disaster area.
Well, Colonel, we have the music in our ears. Where our hours come to a close, and I can't tell you what a mesmerizing hour just to listen to you talk, soaking up your wisdom. Appreciate you so much. And you know what? I want to tell you how much I appreciate your commitment to your faith and to that Bible we all live by, because you don't, as they say in the Bible, you don't go to the right or the left. You keep the focus straight ahead, and you don't compromise your beliefs, and that is very needed and very inspiring, not only to me, but I know all the people who have been listening and watching today. God bless y'all. God bless America, and just remember, do your best. Let God do the rest. We'll see you tomorrow on Wednesday. Bye-bye now. Laura, we got bringing in your tacos. Roberitos. Hey, look at that.
Are we going to have to heat those up in the microwave?
Yeah, we'll heat those up here, man. Laura, thank you so much. That's and hopefully talk to you tomorrow, Laura. We had General didn't have his headset on so he couldn't have heard you. He didn't like that headset, so we couldn't go to. Well, we'll let her be on the air. So, tell her if she can call tomorrow, because I want to thank her properly on the air with the radio folks as well.
We're off social media now, aren't we?
I think we might still be on.
Are we still on social, Jeremy?
Oh, she's still there? Laura, are you there? Laura, are you there?
I don't think the pot's up.
What's that?
Oh, you're still on social? Laura, are you there?
I'm here. Don't do that.
Oh, hey, Laura.
Yes.
Hey, first of all, thank you for these tacos, man. You're spoiling the guys here. You're spoiling the team here. Rubberitos is a great place.
I knew you'd forget them.
Gosh, I know you.
Well, she heard me.
You're
complaining enough about you're not bringing tacos.
Yeah.
Like,
hey, listen. The reason I didn't go to you is Colonel doesn't wear his headset, so he wouldn't have been able to hear you. But if you can call in tomorrow, I'd love to have you come in. Call in tomorrow.
Okay, but I do have one answer to the question that you asked the Colonel that he didn't know the answer to. I know the answer.
Okay.
You cannot remove a country from NATO.
You cannot remove a country from NATO.
However, there is a provision within the bylaws that says that if a country violates all of the terms and conditions under which it has been allowed into NATO, individual member nations have the right to decline to offer assistance or protections to that country.
Oh, that's the caveat.
And
okay,
happened to Turkey.
Okay,
Oh.
I feel a little bit better about that. Way to go! Gosh darn it. Okay, that makes
How come I knew she would know the answer?
well
to that?
because she's Laura.
Yeah, she's
The NATO bylaws.
She's just Laura. what are you going to say?
Oh my word!
All right. Well, I got to run off here, but I will talk to you tomorrow. We love you. God bless you, and I just can't wait for tomorrow to visit with you. Bye bye now.
Love y'all.